podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, January 18th, 2011. Tech News Today is brought to you by Ford, introducing the all-new 2012 Ford Focus Electric with voice-activated sync and My Ford Touch, featuring gas-free power, zero CO2 emissions, and battery management technology that lets you go the distance. Learn more at focuselectricpower.com. And by MailRoute.info. MailRoute is a secure hosted service that provides enterprise-grade virus and spam filtering to companies of any size. Try it right now, absolutely free, at MailRoute.info. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we kick around the tech news of the day, assisted by my old friend, Patrick Norton. Patrick, welcome to Tech News Today.
Hey, Patrick.
I'm so excited. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Tom. Hi, Jason.
Hi.
I should introduce you, of course, as the host of Techzilla on Revision 3's network, revision3.com/Techzilla. It's TEKZILLA, for those of you who don't know, Patrick. But you also do This Week in Computer Hardware right here on Twit.
With the ever so benchmarky Ryan Shroud. It's actually a fun thing. I get to get my serious nerd on with Ryan. The dude goes deep on hardware. If you're interested in the best, the most exciting hardware news and questions, I certainly suggest you check that out. And for
And you froze right then. All right.
Damn.
I bet it was good, though.
Let's get into our top story. Just breaking now. The Comcast NBC Universal deal has been approved. Federal Communications Commission and the Department of Justice have blessed the mega merger. The combined company has agreed to a laundry list of conditions. On the FCC side, only Commissioner Michael Copps voted against it, and wow, is he mad about it. On the Department of Justice side, they have one condition that the FCC doesn't, and that's that Comcast must relinquish its management rights in Hulu. In other words, they have to take their members off the board. Now, they don't have to sell their interest in Hulu, but they do have to take away the voting members that NBC had on the board of Hulu, so they can't as directly affect what happens in Hulu's operation.
You know, the size of this deal, if people go, oh, Comcast, okay, what does this really mean? I mean, the new company is like 234 NBC affiliates, Telemundo, NBC itself, a variety of TV production studios, Universal, the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, it's like there's a lot going on that's part of this new company.
Among the conditions and the commitments Comcast has made are to increase local news coverage, expand children's programming, enhance the diversity of programming available to Spanish-speaking viewers, offer broadband service to low-income Americans at reduced monthly prices, and provide high-speed broadband to schools, libraries, and underserved communities, as well as abide by the FCC's recently issued net neutrality regulations. Of course, they had to anyway as an ISP, one would think. But, Patrick, this is making the megalodon of media companies, not the likes of which we have not seen since Time Warner AOL circa 2002.
Yeah, except for unlike Time Warner AOL, this is actually two real companies with two real business plans that aren't sort of a giant bubbly mess in an old media company. Can I pull Copps's kind of crucial statement that's been, but at the end of the day, the public interest requires much more than it is receiving. The Comcast NBCU joint venture opens the door to the cableization of the open internet, the potential for walled gardens, toll booths, content prioritization, access fees to reach end users, and a stake in the heart of independent content production is now very real. On one hand, I am the king of having massive issues with people mistaking large corporations for citizens. I understand that corporations have the rights of citizens. I understand it's been that way thanks to the Supreme Court since the days of the robber barons in the late 19th century. I understand the sort of legal purpose for corporations of having right, but a lot of people are pointing out they've got restrictions. None of them are going to matter. Comcast is going to do what it's going to do. It's going to wait out any limitations on its behavior. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what this does. I think the net neutrality rules as they were enacted were kind of a joke. It's kind of funny. Verizon, AT&T dropped $11 million on the Hill last year. And guess what's not regulated? FCC doesn't bother to regulate wireless communications.
I think the other thing to consider here is that this merger would be concerning enough with the number of media outlets that are being controlled. Just a television network, movie studio, cable company merger is concerning. But then when it's also cable internet, which includes a virtual monopoly where it operates over the highest speed of broadband, with a few exceptions like Fios, maybe you can consider Uverse. There's not a lot of competition. A lot of people only have Comcast to choose from in their area where they live. And now they're going to have a Comcast that not only is their only choice for high-speed broadband if they want to watch video, but also has a vested interest in delivering you NBC Universal properties.
I'm one of those people who can only choose Comcast. I have no other choice. That is the only.
Well, you have other
provider.
choices, but no other choice for that level of service, right?
That's
You
right.
can get slower DSL.
Yeah.
Or you could get satellite cable. Because two inferior choices and one usable choice actually make a free market.
I'm just talking about on the ISP side, though, right? I mean, I think that's what you're saying, Sarah, is you don't, if you want to get 50 megabits per second, you only got one option.
That's it. Yep.
Right.
So we will see what happens here. I actually think this is going to be really good for lawyers. I think we were going to see a
Complicated mergers are always really good for
they've already been very good up to now. You're right. It's just going to get better from here.
They're like, you know what? This is still complicated. You better retain us another 6 months.
Facebook has decided to change their mind on the whole giving access to phone and address data. They put a blog. I know it did not take long. They put a blog post up Tuesday morning saying, we got some useful feedback. Read outrage over the decision to allow third-party apps to access your address and phone number, and so we're holding off on that. They said they were disabling, but I don't think they actually ever enabled it on the live site. They just enabled it for developers to start working on. So I think they said, look, we've disabled that from the API. You're not going to be able to do that until we can figure out a better way to do this. But they're not backing off, right?
No, I mean, although if they were backing off, they wouldn't want to say they were backing off anyway, because that means that Facebook is just going to crumble under pressure if a few people complain loudly. But yeah, they did say, we look forward to figuring out a better way to deliver this kind of experience through the developer community, and citing things like, hey, if it was maybe some sort of a shopping app, right, that for whatever reason, if you were using it over and over, you might want it to be able to pull your physical address as a shipping address. It's like, yes, there are some instances where this seems like it could be helpful, but I don't think Facebook has some better idea in their back pocket. They just don't know what to do.
The problem a lot of people are bringing up is the fact that it usually lumps all this stuff together. If you're installing an app, it's like, it's going to do all these things. It's going to access this part of your information, yes or no.
Right.
And what a lot of security organizations are saying is, make this different. Make it so that you can say, I'll give you access to all of this except address and phone number, or that you can actually just opt out entirely of having any app access your address or phone number from within a setting, so that you could still use the apps. But if they required you to put in an address or phone number for some reason, like you're talking about, Sarah, like shopping, you would have to type that in manually later. You give the user that level of choice. Patrick, what do you think of this? Is any of this acceptable to you?
No, but most of what Facebook does is unacceptable to me, which is why I almost never use Facebook.
Yeah, Patrick just friended me after I asked him to friend me 2 years ago.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I once every 3 or 4 months, I go up on Facebook. I find some people. I figure out an alternative way to communicate with them, and life goes on. I think Facebook is a brilliant company. I think they've done a magnificent job mining unbelievable amounts of personal information so they can resell it. Anything you put on Facebook, you can assume that intentionally or accidentally it will be shared with everyone Facebook can share it with. So in that sense, I'm probably, on patient reflection, I was kind of like, yeah, they'd probably give out my cell phone number and tell people they had permission to call it if I didn't pay attention enough during an update, a software update, or a web. You know what I mean? Like you go to, not that there's Facebook software in your machine, but you go to the web page, something's changed. I just don't trust Facebook, period.
Well, I think that it's also, I don't want to call Facebook naive, because I think they're the opposite of naive, but they've had so many problems with privacy and folks getting upset about privacy settings not being crystal clear in the past that I don't even know why they tried to push this through. Do they just hope that no one cares anymore and there won't be a public outcry? I just don't know what they expected.
I mean, in theory, from some of the articles, they said it was going to be an option that when you use certain applications, you would be able to opt in to share that information. But what they were doing first was giving developers the opportunity to prepare for you to opt in.
Right.
But I got to be honest with you, a lot of times with Facebook, I see, a company that basically is going to do something first, ask forgiveness later, as long as it continues to elevate, stock prices or their ability to promise people stock options. I don't think they really care, as long as they can continue to get away with things and make money hand over fist.
Yeah, and especially opting in is not helpful when an app confuses somebody into opting into giving their address and phone number that they didn't really know that they were doing. And Facebook developers have gotten in trouble for that very thing.
And in some ways, that's fine. In some ways, it's fine for Facebook to push the boundaries and try to make as much money as possible. The issue is it the most efficient way to constantly enrage people and have them lash out at you in blogs and then modify, or could they show a little more sense about what the reaction might be?
That's what. Yeah, I mean, my point is, it's like, what did they expect?
Yeah.
Why even try? They just hope that people are like, we're tired of complaining about it. Go ahead, Facebook.
How many Facebook users are there, and how many of them really pay attention to the tech media or people writing stories about this?
Very few.
You know what I mean? Like 300 million, 400 million people. There's probably a billion there because they seem to double every 6 weeks.
That's absolutely true, but Facebook still pays attention to that, and it's like they just keep burning their hand on the oven. Like, ow, it's hot. I'll touch it again. Ow, it's hot. Oh, it's still hot. Ow, oh my gosh, it's still hot. How did that happen? Learn some object permanence, Facebook. Jeez.
Every time they make more money, that object permanent just fades a little farther away.
It's like aloe vera on their burnt social fingers. All right, really quickly, HP's WebOS tablet details are leaking out a little more. The tablet codenamed Opal has popped up on Engadget. They've got some purported pictures of the device. Looks like a front-facing camera, buttonless bezel, which is all the rage in iPad killers these days. They think the models will most likely be out by September of this year. And the back shot, this is one interesting thing Ars Technica pointed out, or I think Engadget actually pointed this out. The back shot is glossy in this photo. So if this is a real photo, and if that's the real back of the Topaz, as it's being called, that would mean possibly no touchstone, no wireless charging for this. Because usually the backs are matte when it's a touchstone thing.
I see a mini USB port at the bottom of that.
Oh yeah,
I smell mini USB, like a milliamp or two coming through.
You can kind of see it if you look close.
Yeah,
that definitely looks like a mini USB port right there. You're absolutely right. And that could be the solution. No touchstone charging, which had to be a really big touchstone anyway for that.
Hey,
Power Mac can fix you up.
I have tablet fatigue. I look at this and I go, looks good.
Looks
and
like
I've
another
said that
tablet.
About 5 this week.
All right, we've got the results from Apple's earnings call today, and we'll let you know those in just a second. But first, I want to thank Ford for sponsoring Tech News Today. And at CES 2011, which they also helped sponsor, they introduced the all-new 2012 Ford Focus Electric with voice-activated sync and My Ford Touch. The 2012 Ford Focus Electric is an all-electric vehicle. That means no gasoline engine. Lithium-ion powered battery with high voltage capacity drives the wheels, gives you the power. You just plug it into a 120-volt outlet or with the upgrade kit, a 240-volt outlet, and you are on the go. Has enough power to get you around town. You can pull up to a charging station and get it charged maybe overnight, or in some cases you can get it charged while you're out and about if you live in an area that has the station. It gets you around town, help you with your commute, has all the power you need to do the things you need to do in your daily life. And in some cases, electricity is often cheaper than gasoline. You might want to check your rates, especially if you charge it at night. Electric rates are often lower. The all-new 2012 Ford Focus Electric features sync with My Ford Touch, which responds to voice commands and touch controls for not only entertainment, climate control, sending text messages while you keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel, but also for your battery management in the Ford Focus Electric. If you'd like to learn more, and we encourage you to do so, head on over to focuselectricpower.com and take a look at the all-new Ford Focus Electric. Thanks to Ford for sponsoring Tech News Today. All right, Apple makes record profit of $6 billion in the last 3 months. Apple is known for exceeding expectations because they are very conservative. They don't always exceed analyst expectations, but they always exceed their own projections. This time they exceeded both by quite a bit. Revenues of $26.74 billion and record sales of iPads, iPhones, Macs, driven by the sales of the MacBook Air, also record sales, or also high increased sales. I'm not sure that they were actually a record, but they increased year over year in all three of those categories. iPods dropped, but they didn't drop as fast as they expected them to. They do expect iPods to continue to drop. So a great earnings report for Apple. And interestingly, in the call afterwards, there was not a lot of attention paid to Steve Jobs' medical leave, but Apple COO Tim Cook answered a question about the competition and said, Windows is big and heavy. Android is just a scaled-up smartphone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he basically said in the tablet, in the whole tablet competitor space, Apple has no concerns.
Yeah.
I mean, Windows is clunky. Android is bizarre. We're not concerned, which is, everyone was really zeroed in on how Tim Cook was going to handle this whole thing, especially because obviously Steve Jobs had his, the announcement that he was going to be stepping down for an undetermined amount of time yesterday. So there was that much more scrutiny on him. It's like, Tim Cook kind of throwing out the, yeah, we're good, best earnings report ever.
And he does the earnings calls normally, so it wasn't like an obvious change, right, Patrick?
Right.
Yeah, Steve normally doesn't show up in the earnings calls unless he's panicked about Android and wants to pretend he doesn't care about Android, which is what he did back in 2010, earlier in 2010. I just look at of course Apple's going to pretend nothing matters. They sold like over 7 million iPads last year, and admittedly, I own 2 iPads, but I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. They sold 7 million iPads. That number is just going to get bigger. I think pretending that they don't care about Android, Windows is clunky, Android is useless. I don't know if I'd buy into that. I think that's more wishful thinking on their part. It'll be interesting to see what the numbers look like at the end of 2011. But I think I'm also really curious to find out what they released for the iPad 2, which everybody expects to be announced later this month. But, Cook's really good at what he does, which is basically run the company so that Steve can be absolutely brilliant along with Ives. So,
yeah. 16.2 million iPhones, 7.3 million iPads, cruising past Wall Street expectations of 15.5 and 6.2 respectively. And in the iPad area, 80% of market of tablets went to the iPad. This is iPod-like numbers. Mm-hmm. So here's my question to you guys. Do we think that the tablet market will end up like the smartphone market, where the iPhone is insanely popular, but there's lots of other popular smartphones out there as well?
Yes.
Or will the tablet market end up like the iPod market, where there were lots of great MP3 players, but no one ever bought them? Everyone bought the iPod.
I don't know. I think the former is the more logical way that this is going to go. I mean, tablets, there are a lot of ways to make a good tablet, and some folks aren't interested in iOS. They don't want an iPad. They might have, their heart might lie with the BlackBerry. And they want to play a book. It's like, there are a lot of reasons that people have. Just look at the smartphone market. I think that the tablet market is a lot more like the smartphone market than it would be like the music player market.
What do you
or
think,
whatever you want to
Patrick?
call the iPod market.
I think it's going to end up like the smartphone market. I think most of the MP3 players that were worth considering, like the Zune, came so late in the game. There was just no way to, you know what I mean? Like 80% of the market had been to, 80, 90% of the market had been to the iPod for so long. I don't think there was any real way for anybody to compete. I think it's still very early with the tablet market. I think there's a lot of people who can't stand iTunes. I think there's a lot of people who can't stand the iOS, or just sort of, A lot of people, BMW, great cars, fun to drive, but people don't want to be associated with BMWs. I think there's a lot of people who react that way to the iPhone and to the iPad. And I think the last year has been a huge lesson for Apple that Android, right, this fragmented homegrown operating system that's puked in different formats across umpteen different phones and umpteen different states, man, that turned into a whole lot of sales that are eating into iPhone sales. So I think the tablet battle is probably all far from over, but in 11 months I'd be maybe wow, so 200,000 tablets sold running Android and Windows 7 combined for 2011.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix of the two markets, because you have no established competitors like you did in the smartphone market. It's much more like the MP3 market in that way, but you also have some significant competitors that are willing to jump in, like Android, that you didn't have in the MP3 market. And this did not affect Apple's stock negatively, as you would expect. All the losses that happened from the scare about Steve Jobs' medical leave have evaporated in after-hours trading. In fact, Apple stock was only down 2.25% for the day today, but in after-hours trading, it's back up almost 2%. So
just another reason for the timing of all of this.
You were totally right about the timing. All right, figures from Byte Mobile, which is a mobile traffic management specialist, show that video dominated mobile data traffic in 2010, accounting for over 40% of the total volume in wireless networks worldwide. However, not that many people were watching video. That was the makeup of the percentage of traffic, but only 10% of the mobile using public in the United States were accessing some sort of video content from their mobile devices.
I wonder how much this will change when there are a lot more tablet owners. Are those numbers going to be counted into mobile users watching video? Because I'm not watching video on my iPhone, I'll be honest. It's too small for me. On my iPad, different story.
But do you watch it on Wi-Fi or over your 3G network?
Well, I mean, Wi-Fi if I can.
I'm just wondering, most of the time it's going to be on Wi-Fi, which I think that might be part of this 10%, is that people are watching video, but they're not watching it out on the go when they don't have a Wi-Fi connection. They're probably watching it when they do. But, Patrick, is it worrisome that with only 10%, we've taken up 40% of the total volume of data?
Well, yeah, this could be, I hate to get back to the whole AT&T, Verizon not being under the auspices of the net neutrality agreement from the FCC. But yeah, I think AT&T finds this irritating. I'm sure Verizon does. It's early adopter mode. Most people don't want to watch video on a little tiny screen. They don't want to be prevented from downloading video when they're on 3G, depending on what format they're looking at or how they're trying to download it on AT&T. But I know CD sales for years and years, 10% of the customers would buy like 90% of the CDs in a lot of outlets. So on one hand, I'm not surprised that a small group is consuming so much bandwidth. On the other hand, I think it's going to suck, going into 4G, because all these vendors, like Verizon, really big on 4G. Our phones are going to kick ass. Our tablets are going to kick ass, but we're not going to discuss pricing. We're not going to discuss the data cap. And I think if there's huge video consumption on 3G, I think the data caps are going to be hammered down on 4G and on 4G devices, which are much more appropriate for video distribution.
We'll talk about Sprint's answer to that in just a second. But speaking of video, really quickly before we move on to that, I want to point out that Netflix spends 20 times more on postage than they do on bandwidth. So
no wonder.
But that's misleading, though, because Netflix has a sweetheart deal with a backbone that is charging under CDN rates. That's what the whole kerfuffle is.
What are you talking about? No, they don't.
Yeah.
You're talking about level 3?
Yeah.
No. This is a new deal. They just changed CDNs to level 3, and they have a similar deal to what they had before. What level 3's dispute with Comcast doesn't necessarily mean that Netflix isn't paying normal rates, I don't think.
My understanding is that Netflix, Level 3 got the deal with Netflix by offering a ridiculously low rate for a CDN. That's several articles I've read have basically pointed to have suggested that Level 3 was offering a substantially lower rate.
I've heard that from Comcast.
Yeah. Okay, I've heard it from a couple of places other than Comcast, but I guess what I'm saying is partially is like, they've got a ridiculous deal with Stars, right? The cable companies pay $4 a subscriber for Stars. They pay pennies. Netflix pays pennies for their Stars subscriptions.
Well, this dollar per DVD versus the small amount, 5 cents they pay for a streamed movie comes from Ted Sarandos from Netflix. He's the guy in charge of striking all these deals, and his point in saying it was really to say it's in our best interest to start paying more for the streaming rights. He's willing, there's a lot of negotiating going on, like you say, between Starz and Netflix in this next deal. But Netflix is coming out there saying, you know what, we are willing to pay a lot more for streaming, whereas Time Warner is telling Netflix, well, you're going to have to raise your rates to $20 a month. Time Warner for some reason has something against Netflix and is like, we will never give you anything from HBO, and we will drag our heels on every other property we have.
Time Warner also feels threatened. Time Warner feels threatened by Netflix because a lot of people consider Netflix a very viable alternative to paying exorbitant cable rates to get a lot of channels they don't watch. HBO, which is a property of Time Warner, they did HBO Go, and everybody's like, oh, I'll finally be able to. No, you can't actually get HBO content over the internet unless you're actually already an HBO cable subscriber. So, so on one hand, HBO's like, well, yeah, we might actually consider selling HBO Go online. And on the other hand, they don't want to, sort of kill their golden goose, which is the deal they have with the major MSOs, all the cable operators. And on top of all this is the fact that Netflix is trying to negotiate for more streaming rights directly from the studios and the content producers in various areas, which puts them in conflict with all of the people that are heavily entrenched as cable operators.
There you go. HBO. I think you just uncovered it. That's why Time Warner is upset, because they're a cable operator and a studio, and they don't like the fact that Netflix is becoming a cable operator, somebody they have to compete with. And so they're putting themselves out there against them.
They've also said, HBO has very expensive, high-quality programming. It costs a lot of money to make these great shows.
Yeah. And Netflix is like, fine, we'll pay for that.
Yeah.
Like, no, you can't. You can't afford us. If you have to ask, it's too expensive. But getting back to Sprint, Sprint has decided to deal with its data problems, not by just speeding up the network, because they are one of the fastest networks with WiMAX out there, but they're going to now charge you for 3G data just as much as for 4G data. So I guess they're trying to move you off the 3G data network. I don't know if this is actually going to solve their bandwidth problems, but they're going to now charge a $10 charge for premium 3G
Even
data
though
use
it's
starting
premium
January
3G
30th.
is just 3G. It's like 3G with a shiny star on top of it. I mean, it's still 3G. It's like, you can kind of think of, I kind of make a comparison to Netflix saying, we'll charge you more if you want to still get DVDs in the mail because we'd like to move you over to streaming, but we have less titles on streaming. But 4G is like available nowhere. So if they were trying to get everybody to move over to
in more
4G.
places.
Yeah,
it's in Atlanta. It's now actually available here in San Francisco.
Okay.
It's available in Vegas.
It is available in some places, but it's not.
It's not as widespread.
It's not realistic to say, well, we'd like you to just bump up to 4G. Now's the time. It'll be the same price.
Right.
Well, it kind of is realistic in some ways, because the 4G, like for 4G data devices, like, I've got a data modem from Sprint. Anywhere I have 4G, I have no data cap on that device. And then it downgrades to 3G if 4G isn't available. So it's not like 4G devices won't work. But I think they're basically just trying to push people to 4G.
Yeah.
Because it's the more people they push to 4G, the more they build out 4G. Because there's a big battle going on right now between Sprint, Verizon, and AT&T to see who can build out their next generation network nationwide quickly, because they all need to, whether they want to or not. And it's just easier for them to push everybody on the 4G contracts that'll be more valuable to them in 2 years.
Charge won't affect existing in contracts until you upgrade or activate a new line on a smartphone. So if you've got a new member of the family, you're going to be paying $10 extra. Finally, in Google Court Watch, Google is now facing another challenge in Spain. An agency under the Spanish government claims that under Spanish law, Google is required to remove any links that are brought to their attention by citizens over how their personal information appears online. So these would be reports about them in newspapers that then show up as links on Google.
I love it.
Follow me here. Newspaper reports that, you were indicted for fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Link shows up on Google. Under Spanish law, apparently, you go to Google and say, remove that link. You don't go to the newspaper. You don't ask them to remove the story. The story would still be on the web.
Just so I can understand it, it's because you can't ask a newspaper to remove a story that is known to be true, but Google wasn't the reporter of that story, so they don't just get to say it again.
That's what's ridiculous about this. That's exactly what Spain is saying. It's like, well, we can't ask the newspaper to get rid of us because it's true.
Yeah.
So let's ask Google, and then we can pretend it's not around.
Well, why do they care?
Well, because they want it gone. It's mean.
No, but why does Spain care?
You know what? That's a really
Somebody
good
in the
question.
Spanish government got really pissed off because every time they go to get a new job for the one they were fired off for somebody did something bad.
Right.
Now it's
would
in
have-
Google,
it
and every
could-
time they try to get a job, it shows up on Google. So that's their goal for this.
It could have a chilling effect on newspapers too. If the stories like that didn't receive Google links, they'd receive less traffic.
Yeah, can you imagine? I mean, it sounds like the classic Google, things are out of our control.
Yeah.
That's all our information. Now it's all over Google.
Google has also settled its antitrust investigation in Italy by opening up and sharing more information about AdSense, but also committing to leaving main search results unchanged if a news organization has to be removed from Google News. This always amuses me. Google News is built out of the same search results that Google Search is built out of. And all it does is say, is that a news story from one of these news sources? Then we're going to pop it over here in Google News. In Italy, a bunch of Italian news sites raised concerns. We don't want to be linked in Google News. So Google News said, well, okay, you can remove yourself. They removed themselves and removed themselves from search. And they said, we want to be in search. We want the traffic from search. We don't want the traffic from Google News. And Google's like, well, fine. It's not really that different, but okay, you can do that. You can configure your robots.txt file to remove yourself from Google News and not main search. You can actually request, and we will go the distance to take you out of Google News and leave you in main search. And Italian newspapers responded by suing them. And so in the settlement, Google has said, you can still do what we told you could do from the beginning. And they're like, great, we're settled.
Do you think Google is just so tired of having to work with all these companies individually saying, well, you're not listening, though. You don't understand how this business works. Listen, nothing's wrong here.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. We'll just say it a different way. Are you happy? Fine, go.
That's essentially what happened here. It's not the end of their antitrust problems. Of course, you still have Texas and the European Commission looking into whether they're unfairly not listing competing search engines in their search engine, which we'll leave for another day.
That's so meta, Tom.
A lot of lawyers getting rich.
They always are. We're going to get a little richer by telling you about MailRoute, which will actually make you a little richer, too, because you won't have to spend as much time fighting spam. Do you like spam? Everyone in the chat room says, I like spam. Write spam right now in the chat room. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Exactly.
MailRoute.info will get rid of your spam. It has worked for me. In fact, Tom Johnson from MailRoute just sent me a report. 99% of my email since I signed up for MailRoute this summer has been spam.
I think they like spam.
There's a lot of people who like spam.
They think you're talking about
We're
the
not
food.
talking
Oh, no.
about-
I wasn't talking about the food.
They think you're
Not
talking about the
Hawaiian
food.
spam.
If you like receiving spam emails, type email spam.
You know, fake Viagra.
Now, for those of you who don't like spam, MailRoute can remove like 99% of those emails, making your email usable again. It works for 1 people or 50,000. Small business accounts start at $2 per user per month for 10 users. And because of demand from the Twit Army, those of you who don't like spam in the Twit Army, MailRoute has added a new service for individual users as well, less than $30 per user per year for single users. I don't see anyone typing email spam, so I think they just liked the food. Mm-hmm. I think that was clear. MailRoute.info. Check it out. Sign up. It's absolutely free, and we thank them for their support. Time for the News Fuse. The folks believed responsible for hacking into AT&T last summer and grabbing the emails of famous iPad users like Rahm Emanuel and Harvey Weinstein have been arrested. Daniel Spittler, 26 of San Francisco, and Andrew Arnheimer, 25 of Fayetteville, Arkansas, have each been charged with 1 count of fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to access a computer without authorization, according to U.S. prosecutors in Newark, New Jersey.
I just love that term. Famous iPad user Harvey Weinstein. One of the most
You might know
famous
him
iPad users.
from his use of iPads.
GameStop, the U.S. video game retailer, is planning to open a digital game marketplace on Android. The application will be called Congregate Arcade, which will leverage those same experiences found online. The app will be available to users from the Android market for free. Inside the game, users will have access to 300 free games to start.
That's Congregate with a K.
Yes.
So you can stop by your
Like
GameStop
Kexon.
inside your Android. There'll be absolutely no reason to buy Portal 2 for anything but the PS3 when it finally comes out this spring. Not only are you going to get the PS3 version of Portal 2 with full Steam integration, but you're also going to get a free copy on that Steam integration on your PC and your Mac by linking your PlayStation Network and your Steam accounts. You got to link those accounts, but still, buy the PS3 version, you get 3 versions of the game. And your game saves can be kept in the cloud to be accessed from any system. So you're playing it on the PS3, save the game, and then you take your laptop to work. You can be playing it on OS X at work.
No more work for us.
Yeah.
Hey, they started it. Johnny Chung Lee, one of the core engineers working on Microsoft's Kinect, has left Redmond for dun-dun-dun Google. Lee blogged that after 2 years with Microsoft, he's joined what he called a Google Special Projects team. So, Internet, now's your chance. Go! Begin your wild speculation about Google motion control of CR48s and social media games that you control with a flick of your finger. Do it! It's what you do best.
No way he's making Terminators.
Or that.
He is.
Google is Skynet.
He's totally making Terminators.
Just
Acer plans to bring multi-core Sandy Bridge goodness to Android-based tablets. A company sales manager told IDG that 2 to 3 new tablets sized at either 7 or 10 inches diagonally will be coming out in the first half of the year. The tablet launches will begin a gradual replacement of Acer's small laptop-style netbook computers in line with market demands. That is according to Taiwan sales manager Liu Bingsun.
Well-known digital activist, software developer, and Tunisian Pirate Party member Slim Amamou has been asked to serve as the country's state secretary for youth and sports. He was arrested and jailed a week ago, released a few days later, fled the country. His position will last until new elections are held within the next few months.
Supposedly he's back in the country, I think.
Yes, fled, but has now returned. That's why he got the job.
And finally, Bill Gates is the 5th most admired man, according to a USA Today Gallup poll. While 5th isn't bad, he's actually still in front of the Pope and the Dalai Lama.
Wow.
The results were based on landline and cellular phone surveys with 1,019 adults living in the continental U.S. Gates was named by just over 2% of the respondents, landing him in 5th place. The number 1 was President Obama, who was named by 22%.
Ooh, Dalai Lama must be so PO'd right now.
Yeah, I wonder what that looks like.
Not very holy. I don't know. I think he's
like
probably like
the most at peace, pissed off man.
Right.
He's peaced off.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Researchers at Harvard University's Center for Brain Science have successfully manipulated nematode C. elegans worms. Those are the ones you used to dissect in high school
That
in
have
biology
like the
class.
5 different hearts, and they keep living.
They just, they modified a select few of the 302 neurons and then created something called the Controlled Intervertebrate... Wait. Colbert system, C-O-L-B-E-R-T. I can't remember what it stands for,
happy.
but it is in honor, I'm assuming, of Stephen Colbert. The scientists can manipulate movement of the worms, induce paralysis, and even cause them to lay eggs, all by shining a laser that turns on and off the modified cells at will.
Stop everything. You can shine a laser on a worm and it will lay eggs on command.
With
How
the
does that
Colbert
happen?
system, you can.
How?
Using the Colbert
How many
system.
eggs do they have in there?
I don't know.
More eggs.
Yeah.
More eggs.
I assume you would.
Eggs
You
again.
might run out of eggs at a
Still
certain point.
hungry.
Yeah.
Worm eggs. Very weird.
Omelet.
Who wants an omelet?
C. elegans omelet. Time for the calendar.
Okay. So today, Microsoft is bringing the first piece of Office to the iPhone. It's called OneNote, and it's going to help sync your Microsoft Notes on the iPhone. And to anyone who's going like, wow, Microsoft on the iPhone, this is so crazy. Microsoft goes, hey, we just want you to sync. We don't really care where you sync.
That's what
as
it looks
long as
like.
you're syncing through us.
Yeah.
We're OneNote.
This is a good idea for Microsoft.
I think it is too.
And it syncs to SkyDrive. So you just use your Windows Live ID.
So there you go. Good on you, Microsoft. Unless, of course, you don't want to see Microsoft on the iPhone, and then you'll be very
I love
PO'd
OneNote.
about
That's
this.
a good move.
Yeah, I like the purple. It's good stuff. Today, Roku makes cable channel Wealth TV available for $3 a month on Roku devices. This is a big deal because it's the first actual cable channel that will be available on Roku that will not only be available on demand. Well, I know that we're considered channels, but like traditional cable network. But also you can watch live as a 24-hour network.
Yeah.
with
What is your
commercials.
Patrick?
Okay, I love Roku. I think this is great for Roku. I think the Roku is a fine device. I love the Roku people, but it's like there's like 500 cable networks in the United States that you've never heard of.
And Wealth TV
doesn't have a major deal with either of the two biggest, cable providers in the country. I can't find anywhere what their actual household distribution is. So I mean, it's great for the Roku.
They're on Dish.
They're on Dish, so they have at least 10, maybe 15
distribution
million
is like 10 mil, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, on one hand, great for Roku, on the other hand, it's, I'm trying to decide if this is like, okay, so in a couple more years, for $27 a month, you'll be able to get ESPN, maybe, I don't know, on the Roku.
There's very, very few. All of the other networks who have Roku type experiences are not live streaming. I think that's the big deal here, is that a cable channel said, we're going to give you the exact same thing we give on cable. Mm-hmm. We can't get any distribution anyway. But
I withdraw my meh. I am officially impressed. I apologize to everyone at Wealth TV and Roku.
There's also a show on Wealth TV called Restaurant Makeover Bagel World, if that helps sweeten the pot at all.
It does.
Sounds like something I'd like to watch.
How could it not?
I like bagels. So thanks, Wealth TV. A lot of fun. Also, the white iPhone 4 appears in Best Buy inventory systems with a February 27th launch date. Could it be?
Dun, dun.
Oh, my God.
Sorry, I can't help myself. It keeps coming up.
We will find out.
I don't believe it anymore.
February 27th.
I never believe any of these rumors. I will believe it when it's in my hot little hand. And not a moment sooner.
It is the Bigfoot of iPhones.
It is.
All right, on to the voicemails. 260-TNT show is the phone number. We've got a couple today. Actually, no, we just have the one. This one is from a cake delivery guy. So excuse his boutique cake plug, but I think he has a very interesting point.
Hello, TNT crew. This is Brian, the cake delivery boy over here in Northeast Ohio. I was working on the credit card machine at my wife's cake shop, www.cakeboutiqueshop.com if you were interested. And when they downloaded the software update, the new font on the display was, you guessed it, Comic Sans. I wonder if that's going to make a difference in all of our comprehension of what we read on that screen. Love the show. Keep up the good work.
Of course, he's right. He's responding to the article we read the other day that said more difficult fonts to read make you remember what you read more. And Comic Sans is one of those difficult fonts that increases retention.
Although, if I'm being perfectly honest, I think Comic Sans is perfectly easy to read. It's just upsetting.
But that's
more
what
than
makes
it's difficult.
That's what makes it difficult to read.
Because I'm so
it
50%
evokes an
of me
emotion
is
out of
angry.
you. Yeah, exactly.
I see. I hate this book. I hate it.
Why would you change a point of sale system's readout credit card terminal to Comic Sans?
Because that is what people in the services industry consider a rickroll.
we
I don't have a
Comic
better
Sans
answer.
rolled you.
You've been comic rolled at the register. Burn.
All right, finally, our email comes today from David. He wrote into TNT@twit.tv. See, that's my way of telling you the email address. TNT.
That was funny.
He says, I'm listening to your telling us that Samsung has not updated a phone to 2.2. And we were just saying the Samsung Galaxy S phones have not been updated to 2.2. David says, I'm finding the same thing with my HTC MyTouch Slide. It was supposed to be released to the phone by December 15th. It still hasn't happened. It seems the same shenanigans Samsung is pulling is being pulled by HTC. The story we read said that HTC had the best percentage of updates, but it didn't say they were perfect. You know what? I don't know the HTC MyTouch Slide. I'm hoping it's not just a problem with his not getting the over-the-air update. But yeah, it is up to the manufacturers when they want to, pay for these updates to be made. I don't know if anybody else has heard.
I haven't heard anything
about the MyTouch Slide, but
David,
not every phone out there is going to be updated to Android, and that's one of the differences between Android and an operating system like RIM's BlackBerry OS or Apple's iOS, where it comes from one central place. Mm-hmm. All right, Patrick Norton, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate you coming along.
My pleasure. I'm just still stuck in Android's hot mess of operating system distribution. But it was good to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
You're still stuck on it?
No, it's just all I could think of was like Android is such a mess in terms of operating system distribution, because like you can have a newer phone with an older operating system because of the way it's handled. That was the big thing. Honeycomb distribution was so crazy at CES, where most of the vendors who were spending gigantic amounts of money to develop Android tablets had no access to Honeycomb because Motorola apparently had secured rights to it.
And wouldn't let anyone use the tablet that they had Honeycomb on.
Why? And then the next day, Verizon's press conference includes a big old fat walkthrough on Android Honeycomb. It's just bizarre. I don't understand Google. I don't understand.
It's not Google, actually. It's
Really?
apparently the manufacturers and the carriers fighting it out over who has to pay for the updates to be delivered. On the end that David is talking about. On the end that you're talking about, I have no idea. It's probably the manufacturers.
I think it's time for Google to step up, take advantage of the rounding error in their daily interest earnings on the billions they have in the bank and pay for those updates so that everyone can have the finest version of Android on their platform. Just saying.
Just saying.
Here.
And if you would like to hear
Hey up,
more of what Patrick Norton has to say, check out TechZilla. Let people know where they can find that.
Revision3.com/TechZilla, or just type in TEKZILLA in your browser.com.
Of course, you can find us on the web, twit.tv/TNT. Give us a call. Leave us a voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW, and you can email us, TNT@twit.tv. We'll see you tomorrow.